Prashant Tripathi ji, also known as Acharya Prashant, is a Vedanta teacher. He is an alumnus of IIT and IIMs. During his student days, he was known to be a voracious reader and equally participative in theatre. He felt that there was something amiss in the way people perceived the world and felt that either the civil services or the management studies could help him make the difference. He chose IIM for his studies. Today, he has millions of followers who follow his spiritual resources. I welcome you, Acharya Prashant ji, for a BW dialogue for BW Wellbeing. Sir, thank you so much. आपने हमारे लिए टाइम निकाला.
नहीं, आपका धन्यवाद है इस बातचीत के लिए.
Acharya ji, my first question to you is that we have a lot of people, in fact, increasing number of people who are saying that they are atheist. They do not follow any religion. They seem to be confused about what religion is. They don't know what, according to you, is the importance of religion, whether if somebody is born into it or is it by choice, whatever it is.
You see, there are two kinds of religions. You know, the first one is the usual, formal, organized, popular kind of religion that is generally known by that name. The word religion has been appropriated by organized systems. So in most of these organized belief systems, and there is a story concerning a particular god. So usually when people say that they are not religious or that they are atheists, they mean that they do not subscribe to that belief system or any particular belief system. So they say that we are irreligious or irreligious. And, that was kind of bound to happen, because every story is just that, a story, a product of the mind. And every belief system is just that. It's something that you believe in. It does not really have any truth to it. So all the religions that found themselves on belief were bound to lose charm one day. And that's what is happening. Since the advent of science, and right from the day Newton showed the universe to be deterministic, and then you had Nietzsche, who declared God is dead, and you have today's age when people can be cloned, and man is fighting death and disease, and all the divine rights of the gods are being usurped by man. There actually remains no need to belong to a belief system, because the beliefs themselves are being very openly shown to be false. So that kind of atheism was waiting to dominate thought and society, and that's what is happening. If you can't tell this generation, a well-educated youngster, some fairy tale, some cock and bull story about one supreme figure sitting somewhere high up in the skies, and on his whim one day he decides to create the universe, and the universe he creates through this and that means he picks up some soil, picks up a bone, and chants some verses or mantras or special words and does this and does that. It all sounds so juvenile. People won't really take it seriously. So that kind of atheism was not only waiting to dislodge the conventional kind of religion, but I also think that it is very much all right that is happening. But then, apart from this particular definition of religion, there is the real religion as well. Real religion, not confined to any particular sect or stream or organization or belief system. You could call it essential religiosity. And what is this essential religiosity? This essential religiosity is about the thirst of the mind to truly, honestly reach a point, a destination, a state where it can be at rest, where it can be at peace. Now, this is real religiosity. Now, this religiosity must not be shunned, it cannot be done away with. Because if man keeps aside real religion, then he will turn neurotic. Because religion is not something that you take upon yourself. Religion is one's fundamental crying inner need. It's like thirst of the body. The body has thirst, hunger, and such things, and the mind has restlessness and ignorance and unfulfillment and loneliness, and these are the states of the mind, the states of the mind that the mind is actually born with. We take birth with these things. There is fear inside, there is loneliness inside, there is ignorance, and there are a lot of animalistic tendencies that we are born with. So these are there, and therefore man needs true religion. If man does not have true religion, man will suffer endlessly. And therefore it is a bit unfortunate that in the name of atheism, even true religiosity is being rejected. Atheism is wonderful if atheism is used as a counter narrative to all the stupidities of popular organized religion. In that sense, a lot of great saints were actually atheists. A lot of religious reformers were actually atheists because they did not subscribe to the prevailing notion of godhood. And the prevailing notions of godhood, you would agree, have been very rotten at many points in history, at many places on the earth. And that's why there has been a need for religious reform. And when we have had those reformers, we have been grateful to them. So that kind of atheism is all right. But I become a bit nervous when I see people discounting even core spirituality by asserting that they are atheists. Now, if you are atheists, that's all right. See, you may not want to have a God, and that is all right. One can understand that God is a bit of fiction. But it is not understandable if somebody says that he or she does not want to have peace or truth. Now, real religiosity is about having peace, not about having God. It's another matter if you start calling God as a synonym of peace or truth or understanding, and that is a different thing. But that does not usually happen in the popular version of religion. So the religion that wants you to believe in stories and a certain kind of cosmology and certain stories of Genesis, if you want to discount that religion by becoming atheistic, it is pretty much all right. But it would be a tragedy if we start saying that we don't need compassion, that love is an outdated value, that we do not really need deep understanding, that we do not need simplicity, right? That it's all right to wallow in falseness, that we do not really need to know the core truth. Why? Because we are atheists. Because we are atheists. Then there is a great problem. So if the trend away from religion, which we are witnessing in America, in Europe, in Japan, even in countries like ours, if the trend away from popular religion results in a cleansing of religion, results in people moving away from religion towards spirituality, then it's a welcome thing, actually. It's a welcome thing, because we do not want superstition in the name of religion, do we? We do not want strife in the name of religion. And we very well know that a lot that goes by the name of religion is truly rotten. We do not want all that. So if people are dispensing with all that, people are dropping all that, and by dropping all that, they turn truly religious or spiritual, then it's a welcome thing. On the contrary, if someone says, I'm atheistic and I do not believe in Bhagwan or Ishwar, and therefore I am refusing to read the Gita even, or I am keeping Vedanta aside, I do not want to go into the philosophy of the Upanishads, then it's a scary thing, very scary thing. You see, that has been, if I may continue and add to this, you see, that has been the intended relationship between religion and spirituality. Religion is the outer case. Religion is the shell within which the core, the kernel of spirituality is enclosed. So people were taught to be religious so that they could be spiritual. But Maya is so wonderful that religion, instead of becoming a gateway to spirituality, became a barrier against true spirituality. So therefore, when religion is challenged, or when religion is dropped or discarded, sometimes I take it as something auspicious. It's good that people are discounting the usual kind of religion. But if along with religion, spirituality too becomes something abhorrible, something that can be avoided, and something that is taken as outdated and repugnant, then we have a great problem. We cannot throw the baby away with the bathwater. Just because most of what we call as religion is a huge mess, we cannot claim that even the core of religion is something we can do without. No, we cannot do without that. Man is a religious animal. We cannot live without true religion. Equally, if we have bad religion, it will not let us live. So it's a tightrope walk, and we have to be very, very careful and attentive in negotiating it.
Acharya, I mean, you very beautifully brought out that there is an organized religion or something which has been an interpretation of someone, and somebody's tried to organize that, and then there is a true religion, and spirituality works under the paradigm of a true religion. Now, we are living in a day and age when people who speak about that, I'm not religious, I'm a spiritual person, but at the same time, they only believe something that can be seen and proved. So, is there some scientific context to spirituality that is there, so that people, because at the end of the day, like you said, that religion forms a boundary, it's a outer shell within which spirituality remains, because there has to be something that stops you from doing something wrong or something which is fundamentally, upsetting. So, how can we define spirituality and align it with something which can be seen and proved or is more scientific?
No, you see, the only thing that spirituality and science have in common is an honest urge to know the truth. In science, you work on observations and experiments, numbers and data, and you don't fudge them. If you see something, you record it as it is, right? Spirituality is about the inner world, and by that I just mean the mind. Science observes the external universe using the senses that we have. So use your eyes, you use your hands, and all other faculties possible to know the facts of the visible, observable universe as you experience it. Spirituality is about observing the mind, seeing how the whole thing functions inside. And these two have to be in tandem. In fact, the Upanishads put it very clearly and very succinctly. They say that you cannot have one of these without the other. The knowledge of the mind is called as Vidya, and the knowledge of the universe, the domain of science, is called as Avidya. And the Upanishads say that someone who wants to have inner knowledge without having worldly knowledge will fall into a very, very deep well. In fact, they say the same will be the lot of the person who respects worldly knowledge without having any inner knowledge, Atmagyan. He too will suffer. But the one who intends to be spiritual without being scientific will suffer even more. So this clear and very categoric comparison is there. That if there are two kinds of persons, one who is worldly without being spiritual, that person will suffer deeply. But the suffering of the person who claims to be spiritual without understanding the world will be even deeper. So these two have to go together. And the one thing that will help a seeker be both spiritual and scientific is the common value that enables generation of true knowledge of any kind, and that is honesty, integrity. In fact, you see, if you observe a vehicle moving, it will be very difficult for you to refute that you did see a vehicle moving, because the vehicle was there and a camera can record the movement of the vehicle, and there can be 5 other people who can testify that a vehicle did indeed go this way. But if the vehicle that passed by aroused, let's say, jealousy within oneself, there would be nobody to testify that, there would be nobody to prove it, and there is no camera that can record the jealousy that arose within. So honesty then becomes even more important, because if you are someone who wants to deny the inner facts, it can be very easily done. So what is happening outside of you? if you study that with honesty, curiosity, and inquire into it deeply without any bias, then you are scientific. And if you carry the same spirit of inquiry to your mind, what is it that is happening within? From where do my thoughts arise? How do I get emotional when triggered in a particular way? Why does anger explode when subjected to such stimuli? What am I fearful of? These feelings that I call as my own, where did I really get them from? If you inquire into these things, and inquiry into these things has to be a very live thing. It has to be something that happens in the moment. You cannot reflect on anger after it has passed. It would not be of much use. Spirituality says, in the moment when things are happening within, know them. So the approach is similar to that of science, except that it requires a much more honest mind, because the incentive to lie to oneself, to deceive oneself is great. And there are hardly any tangible repercussions or punishments. You can be a self-deceptive person who keeps telling himself, oh, I'm very compassionate, I'm very caring, or that I listen with empathy, that I'm not prejudiced or biased. And you can convince yourself that you are that way, and there can be just no tangible proof that I have been lying to myself. So that's, I don't know whether I have addressed what you said, but
You did, Acharya. Acharya, I mean, you said, the one line that I distinctly caught was living in the moment, right? If you look at healthcare today, doctors keep telling the patients that they need to avoid stress. BP ho gaya, avoid stress. And patients are at a loss of knowing how to do that. They're always either living in the fear of the future or regrets of the past. And is it in a person's control? And if yes, how does one, in a very simple way, keep stress away? Is there some doable way to do so?
no, you see, I'll begin from living in the moment and then come to the stress part of it. You see, living in the moment is a very, very misplaced phrase, and an idea that's being implemented at the wrong place. A philosophy that is being touted to the wrong audience. There is nishkam karma, action without the desire for returns. And when you are into desireless action, when internally you are that kind of a being who picks up the right work, the right action, the right project, the right battle, and gives everything to it without worrying for the results, just because the work, the job, the action is worth it, then and only then are you entitled to not worry about the results and live purely, blissfully in the moment. Living in the moment is the prerogative of a Nishkam Karma Yogi alone. Then there is the whole lot of us commoners. Our actions are from the center of desire. So our actions are sakam. Kam means desire, sakam means with desire. When you are working with desire, in fact, it is very, very advisable that you do not live in the moment, because you are anyway not. Desire is always pointing at the future. No, that's where the fruits of the desires are expected. So when you find that you are being carried away by desire, when you find that you are being powered by desire to do something, dictated by desire to do something, then you must necessarily look at the future and ask yourself what will be the consequences. Now, what is happening is that people who are acting purely out of their blind, ignorant, even animalistic desires are using this phrase, living in the moment, to avoid looking at the future. It's like going to a restaurant, ordering a huge spread without looking at your pocket and saying, I just want to enjoy the moment. I don't want to think of the size of the bill. But the bill will indeed come. That's the law of Prakriti. No. And then you cannot say, oh, I was living in the moment. I didn't worry what would happen tomorrow. Looking at tomorrow is the sign or characteristic of fearful people. I'm bold enough to just enjoy the present moment and leave the future with abandon. You cannot do that. So you see, these are two different centers. The one who is dedicated to something extremely important, very, very sacred, automatically starts living in the moment. Then this does not have to be taught to him. Living in the moment then is not an objective, it is a byproduct. The objective is to serve something that is extremely lovable, something that you know to be unavoidable, indispensable in your deepest understanding. You have paid deep attention and you have come to see something that you just cannot avoid or turn your back to. And you take it up. You take it up because it calls you, it cannot leave you, it just grips your mind. So you dedicate yourself totally to it. You offer yourself as sacrifice to something extremely important or extremely lovable, whichever we want to put it. If you are a Gyan Yogi, you will say you are giving yourself to the truth. On the way of love, you will say you have been arrested by something extremely lovable. Now is the only possibility of living in the moment, because now you are helpless. Even if you want to think of the future or the consequences, you just cannot. You are in love or you are in duty, and that duty is the essence of dharma. I have to do it. It's a holy battle. I have to fight it. Even if I want to think about the consequences, it won't matter, because irrespective of the consequence, I have to fight it. So there is no point wondering about the future. Irrespective of the future, this has to be done. Now, this is Nishkam Karma Yoga, and Nishkam Karma Yoga alone is living in the moment. And the fundamental thing then is desireless action. Living in the moment is a natural consequence, or you could say a corollary, a natural corollary of Nishkam Karma Yoga, desireless action. But it's a travesty when the usual common mind starts talking of living in the moment. You should not live in the moment. When people come to me and talk of these things, living in the present, etc., I say, avoid that. Just do not live in the moment. See how you are living and worry about your tomorrow. Because the kind of actions the kind of life, the kind of mind that you have, it's getting you into trouble constantly. But it's just that the trouble is not very visible today. Now look at tomorrow. And if you have any ability to visualize, you will see that you are moving towards the edge of the cliff. Right? See, that's the thing. Religious percepts are for truly religious people. They must not be appropriated by those who want to use religious concepts for personal sensual gratification. That's when religion gets abused and becomes unpopular among the masses. Now coming to stress. See, we talked of desire and we talked of desireless action. Stress is the fundamental nature of human life. Among all living beings, man is someone predisposed to stress. No animal, bird, fish, or any other life form is capable of experiencing as much stress as we are. And there is a fundamental reason. The condition of stress points at our own internal existential condition. And that condition is of lack of fulfillment. We are born desirous. Desire and stress go together. We are born desirous. An animal is not born desirous. The animal's desires are very bodily, very material, and therefore very limited, and also very episodic. The animal would not be, for example, thirsty or hungry or lustful all the time. So there are periods when the lion would want to hunt or the cow would want to graze. But man has an existential vacuum within. You clothe us, you feed us, you give us everything that we can ask for, and you will find that we are still not contented. Is that not true? That won't happen in the case of an animal. You feed an animal well, and you give it a proper, secure, sheltered place, and you will find the animal very, very restful. You won't look at the animal's eyes and find restlessness or psychosis or an existential angst. You won't find it there. The animal would be at peace. But man is never at peace, irrespective of what he has or what he has not. So we are born with desire, and that desire is our fundamental internal stress. Now, that stress is not necessarily something bad, because it is that desire, that stress, and I'm equating the two for the purpose of this conversation, because it is that particular desire, stress, that can elevate human consciousness, provided the stress is channelized in the right direction. People talk of being desireless, but before you become desireless, you ought to have the right desire. In fact, that is the definition of the right desire. The right desire is one that leads you towards desirelessness. Similarly, there is the right stress and the wrong stress. The right stress is that which leads you towards freedom from stress. And that's the ultimate goal of all spirituality. The state of mukti or anand, where there is no stress, where there is just that simple, subtle joy. Nothing loud about it. Nothing gross or coarse about it. The simple, subtle, ordinary joy of existence. That's the destination. But one has a long way to go before the destination. And you cannot travel that way without having the right fuel and the right motivation. Now, right stress is the right fuel and the right motivation. And by that, I do not mean that one needs to take on additional stress. What I'm saying is one is born with stress. So one cannot just discount stress as something that conditions give you, or that comes to you occasionally or incidentally. No, that's not true. Stress is inbuilt in the human system. Stress is, you could say, the fundamental nature of the ignorant consciousness. The thing is to understand that stress, to ask yourself, what is it that my desires are really calling out for? And then, like an expert navigator, turn your desires towards the right end. And all that will involve stress. All that will even involve suffering. So, what to do with suffering? One cannot wish it away. It is there. Put it to the right use. Suffer, but suffer rightly. Suffer, but suffer for the right cause. Our very condition is of strife. You are born in a battlefield. So fight you will. Fight you have to. Now fight on the wrong side. On the right side, that is. Be very cautious where the right one is and how to know falseness. It becomes quite tempting to talk of being stress-free or desireless or cool, composed, retired, tranquil. These are beautiful words. But these things cannot just come to you, sitting where you are. These are the ultimate things our mind, our consciousness is clamoring for. One has to work really, really hard. And that's the right purpose of desire. To lead you to the place that will justify your life, your birth. And the place that justifies your life is also the place, the scriptures say, that relieves you of death. If life is given a true purpose, if life is lived rightly, then one attains deathlessness. Not that the body will not die, in a spiritually metaphorical sense. So when a stressed out being comes, one has to ask, what is it that you are so worried about? What is it that you are so worried about? Kabir Sahib will say, for example, if you have to be worried, then worry about Ram. And his Ram is the formless, attributeless, one truth. He will say, it's not that you are worried. That's not the problem. The problem is that you are worried about something so petty, so trivial. Why don't you worry about something that's indeed consequential? All right, you are afraid. Now you are afraid that someone is taking away 200 rupees that belong to you. Now about that you are afraid and angry and you have all those. But why don't you worry when your entire life is being wasted? See how you are living. See how you are spending your days and nights. And your entire life is being wasted. Now, is the worth of those 200 rupees more than the worth of this life that you have? That's what saints ask you. So do worry, do repent, and do cultivate desire. But cultivate desire for that one thing that the saints would sometimes call as Ram, sometimes as Hari. The gurus would call that as the Lord. Hmm? So that's that one thing worthy of one's desire, and that sublimated desire is then called as spiritual love. So if one is stressed out because one is not attaining mukti, I would say, all right, all right, all right. Hmm? Uh, at least the intention is pure. But if one is stressed out because the share market has fallen by 0.04%, then I'll say, sir, you need to reconsider what you are so worried about and concerned about.
So if I understand correctly, it is about, raising your level of consciousness, mindfulness, and also find the purpose, the right purpose that makes all the things that you worry about or the stresses that you have worthwhile.
Of course, of course.
Yeah. Now, Acharya, a lot of we as human beings living in the worldly world, uh, we spend a lot of our living life as married people, and I've heard a lot of people not being able to define what is not working. So they'll always come and say that, this is something missing. I do not know what it is, but I'm unable to find happiness in my marriage. And we have also gradually started moving towards divorce being an easy exit because everybody says you don't have to be in a toxic relationship. Are there any ingredients of happiness that can lead to a lasting marriage that works for everyone?
Is there anything that works for anybody, let alone marriage? Is there anything in life that one is happy with? When someone comes and says, I'm not happy with my spouse, is this person happy with his car or the walls of his house or his job, or his slippers or his friends or his parents? Is this person happy even with himself? The problem is not the spouse. The problem is the unrealistic expectation we cultivate with respect to the institution of marriage. The thing is that if you are not joyful within, no man or woman can enter your life and turn you joyful. That's not going to happen. But then popular literature and romantic philosophy and the movies, they have led us to believe that irrespective of how rotten we are within, some magical person will enter our life and totally transform it. Now that cannot happen. When this fellow who does not know why the wife is not able to give him what he wants comes to us and he says, this is my condition, I would ask him, is there anything that pleases you? Forget the wife. Before the wife came to you, you still had already lived for 25, 30 years. What was the quality of your life then? Were you better off? All right, you want to be divorced. Go ahead. Now, tell me, after the divorce, are you contented? You're still not contented. You are not contented before the marriage. You are not happy after the marriage. In between, there is this mirage called marriage. How is this going to succeed? So, no marriage can actually, ever succeed. The institution of marriage is a very practical thing. We are animals. And if man and woman are not formalized by way of religion and by way of law into a relationship, then there is the possibility of utter chaos and total anarchy. And we do not know what would happen to the kids that would be born from that anarchy. So that's the reason the institution of marriage has existed, prevailed, and to a great extent also succeeded. It has succeeded not because it gives you something spiritual. It has succeeded because we are animals. Let's be clear about that. The person who enters into your life or your house does not come to raise you to divine possibilities. That person comes to you because you do not deserve to lead a single bachelor life. You do not have that kind of internal discipline. And that's something I agree with. When people come and say that if everybody is living the life of an unmarried person, then the society would just break down. I think I'll have to agree, because we do not deserve to not to marry. To not to marry is an accomplishment. To not to marry is a status you have to achieve. You're not born bachelor, you're born married. Bachelorhood is something that you have to earn and achieve. Even the kid, the 2-month-old kid, is actually a married thing. Because the kid may not be formally married. The kid may not have one particular wife, but the kid is lonely and always looking for company. And the kid has the seeds of lustfulness and blind sexuality already embedded in his body. In that sense, the kid is already married, even at the age of 2 months. So one has to then become unmarried through the spiritual process. And that is what the scriptures called as taking your second birth, Dvij, twice born again. No, that's not born again. That's actually divorced. What you call as taking your second birth is actually a divorce from the wife that you carry from the mother's womb. What's the name of that wife that we carry from the mother's womb? Prakriti. So we already have a wife. And all the women already have a husband. Just as we bring wives to the world when we are born as twins. We are born as couples. I am born and my wife is born. Who am I? I am Purush, she is Prakriti. Similarly, all women too are born with husbands. The thing is to get divorced. All spirituality then in some way is the art of successful divorce. Can you be rightfully divorced? And when you attain that divorce in classical language is called separation between Purush and Prakriti. That divorce is another name for witnessing or distant observation. Observation without involvement. That's the name of the divorce. So that's, you see, something quite arduous. No? All of us are not even willing to take that challenge up. And since we are not willing to take that up, therefore, we are condemned to get married again. So marriage is a necessary condemnation. Why? Because marriage, you see, is just a manifestation of the state you are in right since your birth. The wife is there, but the wife is not visible. The kid is just 2 months old, so the wife is not visible. When the kid gets formally married, then the wife becomes visible. Now you can say, oh, there is the wife. But the wife was always there. The wife was in the mind. The kid was always married. People say, I'm already in love. It's just that I'm looking for a girl now. That's the condition of most youngsters. Similarly, everybody is already married. It's just that they don't know the face and the name and the body of the wife. And vice versa. You could look at it from a woman's perspective as well, and the thing would remain the same. So, you see, we have very, very unclear understanding of marriage, and therefore we have very unrealistic expectations from marriage. We do not know who we are, and therefore we do not know what marriage is. And therefore we raise both, you could say horrible and hilarious, horrendous and hilarious expectations from marriage. And then we say, oh, I am the particularly unlucky one whose wife or husband has not been able to deliver the goods. Just that the wife or the husband on the other side is saying exactly the same thing. So when it comes to the spiritual objective, the institution of marriage is not even constructed to have a spiritual objective. Please be very clear about it. There is nothing called a soulmate. Nothing called a soulmate. The institution of marriage is a useful one constructed to give you a body mate. And I'm saying it's useful because if the institution of marriage is not there, then there is indeed a possibility that the animal within us would run amok. Already people are so fond of peeping into their neighbor's house. And if they are not constrained by religion and law and morality, then you do not know what the restless animal within us can do. With that understanding now, we will have very tempered and realistic expectations from marriage. Now we will know that if we are living with a woman, then there can hardly be any spiritual dimension to this association. She is here because I am lustful. She is here because I am lustful. And she has agreed to come to me because she too is lustful and insecure and lonely. And that's the only reason. That's the only reason. Now, the moment I say this, people will bring in the word love. They'll say, but what about love? Don't husband and wife love each other? No, sir, they do not. Love is the exclusive domain of a spiritual mind. And the spiritual mind does not rush to someone of the opposite gender to seek fulfillment. One basic characteristic of spiritual mind is that it knows that fulfillment cannot be found in the person of the other, in the body of the other. That the body is something that you are already carrying. How can another body give you something additional? Your own body is itself such a problematic thing to carry. How can one more body add some value to your life? So, love is something that really is not a matter between a man and a woman, a girl and a boy, a hero and a heroine. That's not really love. But just as we do not know ourselves, we do not know what marriage really is, we also do not know what love really is. So in our blind quest for love, we just keep stumbling from one place to the other, rolling on, stuttering, not knowing a thing, marrying once, marrying twice, marrying thrice, and then becoming a poet. Because now you have enough experience to beguile and corrupt others. And you can then say so many things. Oh, I was a great lover. It's just that fortune didn't smile at me. And the thing is, fundamentally, without a spiritual basis, one will keep making all kinds of idiotic decisions, pay the price, and still not understand what has gone wrong.
Acharya, I have just two more questions.
Yes.
And one is that, if you look at we had discussed religion and how religion and spirituality work. If you look at the age-old gurus, they were also looking at helping you lead a better life. Today's life coaches and new age gurus are also helping you do the same. But we have, scriptures that help us. But how can we make these scriptures relevant to today's generation?
The scriptures are actually timeless. And I'm not referring to every storybook that has come to carry the name of being religious scripture. No, I'm not referring to storybooks and books of beliefs and books of superstitions, and all those things. I'm referring to the few pure core scriptures that do not contain nonsense, that do not contain things to entertain you, to feed your mind and to feel happy or indeed xenophobic about. Not the kind of scriptures that make you feel that you particularly have one kind of religion and that is a supreme religion. No, I'm not referring to that. I'm referring to core spiritual texts. Those core spiritual texts, they address something that's not going to change. It's like asking, how can we make the Pythagoras theorem relevant today? The thing is, as long as there is time, there would be squares and triangles, and a square plus b square will be c square. You don't have to again make it relevant today. You don't have to rediscover Newton's laws or Pythagoras theorem. They are there because they are stating a particular fact. Now, the fact of the objective material universe is squares and triangles and circles and all kinds of geometries. Similarly, the fact of the inner universe is unfulfillment, discontentment, fear, greed, jealousy, comparison, lust, ignorance, loneliness, all kinds of neurosis. That's within. Now, that has not become outdated. If you look at man as he was 5,000 years back or 10,000 years back, and if you look at man as he is today, what has changed internally? Nothing. Externally, our conditions have changed. Externally, today we have more knowledge, more technology, more prosperity, more power. But internally, are we not much the same as the caveman? Are we not psyched out? Do we not seek superiority? Are we not territorial? Are we not possessive? Are we not ignorant? We are exactly as we were several thousand years back in the internal sense. Therefore, the scriptures continue to be as relevant today as they were 1,000 years back. And the thing is that our internal state is not going to change very rapidly even 2,000 years from now. That is, if we survive these 2,000 years, which is unlikely given the kind of treatment we give to our scriptures. So the scriptures will continue to be relevant, and in some sense, the religious scriptures are the only books that will have timeless relevance, because everything else will change. You see, the polity of the Middle Ages is not relevant today. The science of 14th century hardly has any relevance today. In fact, the deeper you go into the atom, you find even Newton is losing relevance. So all other things will lose relevance, become outdated, and will start belonging to the museum. But the scriptures are never going to belong to the museum, because every child, every new birth is born from absolutely the same place. Somebody was born 5,000 years back. You take the newborn today and you take the newborn 3 centuries back, they are exactly the same. Since they are exactly the same, after they are born, then they will be clothed differently, fed differently, educated differently and all those things. That's all right. But internally, they are just the same. So you require the scriptures always. If the current generation is not very fond of the scriptures, it's not because the scriptures have become outdated. It is because the scriptures have become unfashionable. They have gone out of fashion, not out of date. Now, fashion is something man-made. And fashions and trends are within our control. They can be changed, they must be changed. It has to be turned cool to be reading, for example, the Ashtavakra Gita. A youngster sitting in the college lawns with a copy of the Ashtavakra Gita must become a symbol of coolness. That youngster must be able to put that pic on his Instagram profile with pride. You see, this is what I'm carrying, and this is the coolest book you can ever read. And if the Ashtavakra Gita does not become the coolest book you can ever read, then you will have a deluge of all kinds of nonsensical self-help books. The entire self-help space exists just because we are missing the Ashtavakra Gita. And when I say Ashtavakra Gita, I'm using that title as representative of all the worthy scriptures. I could have as well taken any other name, any other title. So, and when those things are brought to the youngsters, they are bound to take them favorably, even fall in love with what an Ashtavakra is saying. Because what an Ashtavakra is saying is not just something that you have to respect by way of custom. What Ashtavakra is saying is practically very, very useful right now. And that's the reason one is bound to be mesmerized, one is bound to be enchanted by the verses. It's just that a wrong kind of culture has been created. The trend has to be set right. The trend has to be set right. And those who can see that something has to be set right must then work for it. That's an obligation that falls on them. So that's what we are also trying to do, to bring the scriptures to today's age and the young audience.
I couldn't agree more with you that we need to work towards making it cool so that it finds acceptance in the newest generation. My last question to you, Acharya, is that, keeping in mind your background and what you have achieved, to date, what are the top 5 things you wish to have business leaders of today internalize so that they can create happy places to work for themselves as well as for the teams that they are responsible for?
The first thing is that there has to be a purpose to business. When you have a purpose for doing something, then because of the purpose, because of the immediacy of the purpose, because of the very power and the urgency of the purpose, money has to be created. It is the purpose that is paramount. And since we are worldly beings, corporal beings, we require money in whatever we are trying to do. Even to purchase a spiritual scripture, one requires some money. So money then is the byproduct. Or money then is the fuel that you need to drive your vehicle, your organization, your caravan to your destination. When that purpose is there, then a lot of your problems are automatically taken care of. I'm talking of a business environment. You don't have to worry about retention or attrition then, for example. The right people, they don't have to be lured with lucrative offers. And the wrong people, the system automatically ejects them out. It's as if the system does not want them, so the system has thrown them away. You don't have to fire them. And from a business perspective, do you see the kind of cost saving it implies? The right people will be drawn towards you. You don't even need to have a full-fledged HR department. People will just come. And you also do not need to be wondering that your employee cost is high and what do you do with the non-performers. In a truly purpose-driven, sacred environment, nonsense starts feeling suffocated, and therefore it runs away on its own. People fire themselves out. You don't have to fire the wrong ones. And you don't have to motivate the right ones. You don't have to urge people to work harder. Because it's the purpose then that drives the people. The CEO need not be the chief motivator then. The salary and the perks and the raises need not be the chief motivator then. You know what you are doing, and you know it deserves to be done. You're in love with it. That's the most important thing. That's actually number 1 till 5, though I'll try to think of 4 more things. But this one thing takes care of almost everything else. And if you do not have a purpose-driven organization, then you will have to work very hard. You'll have to work very, very hard just to keep your tribe together, just to maintain your particular level of market share and profitability and all the other metrics. I've been a strategy consultant, a business consultant in my corporate life. So I know how hard people have to work in the corporate. And a lot of this difficulty businesses take upon themselves because they are not vision driven or value driven. The employee knows for sure that the entire setup exists to make money for the shareholder. And the shareholder is some Lalaji sitting at the top, Lalaji and his entire tribe. So now in such an environment, why won't the employee simply take care of his own limited selfish personal interests? Because that's the very vibe in the organization. That's in fact the avowed purpose for which the organization exists, to maximize shareholder profit. The employee says, if the shareholder is maximizing his profit, then why should I be a fool to not maximize my own profit? Now there is conflict, because the shareholders' interests and the employees' interests need not be necessarily aligned. So take care of that. Then happy workspaces, you said. Deal a lot in numbers. From a spiritual perspective, facts are very, very important. Facts are the door to truth, I say. And facts are best captured in numbers. Anything that is material can be quantified. And what can be quantified must be quantified. If you do not quantify it, then you are leaving it vulnerable to imagination, extrapolation, exaggeration, and a lot of myth making. So deal in numbers. That serves many purposes. It creates a very just workplace. Otherwise, it often happens that just by the apparent force of their personality, some people start getting higher returns than they deserve. The real performers, the honest ones, the ones who have their heart at the right place, they don't get recognized if you do not have very, very objective metrics for performance measurement. And irrespective of how advanced an organization is, it does happen that a lot of subjectivity creeps in when it comes to assessment and evaluation. That must not be there. So internally, there must be clarity, and externally, there must be numbers. What else would lead to a happy workplace? Be very cautious of mercenaries. Skill can be developed. But building a heart is a much more time-taking and arduous process.
Right.
I'm not saying that totally unskilled people can be hired. No, not that. But if it's a choice between skill and center, when I say center, I mean where are you coming from? What the center of your thought, your existence, your mind is. So if it's a choice between skill and center, go for the center. And later on, they can be skilled. Skill is easier to impart. Internal substance is much more difficult to impart, and also workplaces are not designed to impart substance. You can have a great training facility in your IT company, for example, that imparts skill, but you really do not have the kind of people and the environment who can be gurus and transform a person from within. That's not your domain. So don't be myopic. Don't be myopic. There is a great temptation to quickly hire or poach the person who seems to have the right kinds of skills that your urgent project requires at the moment. So you just want to go and pick that person and offer him a fat sum. Avoid that temptation. Avoid that temptation. The fourth one I would say is love the purpose for which the organization exists. Therefore, love the organization itself, but don't be attached. Learn to drop. The value of renunciation is useful even in the corporate context. Letting go of a lot of things is extremely important, be it be it brands that are over the peak now, or people who have been for X years in the organization, but clearly are not keeping pace or moving in the right direction, or the old kinds of systems that you have. So there has to be a great love for the central purpose, and that must never be dropped. Equally, everything else must be subjected to careful analysis, and whatsoever appears redundant must be dropped without attachment. What we find in practice is usually the opposite. We are prepared to drop the core purpose. We are prepared to change the field of business itself. So, a food processing company might decide that it wants to get into consumer finance or into footwear. And there it does not have any compunctions. But when it comes to challenging the internal values and the systems and the operations and the old people who have been hanging around since a decade, then there is a lot of resistance towards change. Oh, how do I drop this person? Or how do I change that process? No. Keep the center immovable, and everything else should be movable. Everything else should be movable. Be very detached. Be very loving towards the center and very detached towards everything else. Happy workplaces. Just as there is a dharma needed in the society, there has to be dharma within the organization as well. I'll elucidate. You see, why was Krishna so adamant that Arjun must fight? The reason was, if Duryodhan gets the throne, then Hastinapur, being a very important kingdom, a lot of people, the entire population, will be subjected to an unjust ruler. And that is not all right. Power must belong to the right place. Power must belong to the right place. Similarly, within an organization, one has to be very careful that the right ones are identified and empowered. Right? Typically, what happens is that the right ones are not vocal. And they are not vocal because they are the right ones. Rightness does not have to be very vocal. So they are not very vocal. But the consequence is that then they become marginalized or do not get noticed or do not remain in the center of things. So knowingly or unknowingly, the ones at the top fail in identifying them. This kind of identification is extremely important, and the right things must be rightly rewarded. That is dharma. If it becomes known in the organization that one can rise the ranks through devious kind of behavior, then a rot sets in. Everybody very quickly gets the the clue, and it becomes a norm to behave in inappropriate ways for the sake of personal self-interest. So, it matters a lot who's sitting at the top, who's being given the authority, who's wielding the power. And just as we do not know whom to befriend, just as we do not know whom to marry, just as we do not know the right car model to buy, just as we remain confused in most of our life choices day to day, we similarly do not know how to identify the right person to be given power. And it's an extremely important decision. If you empower the wrong kind of people, that's like giving Hastinapur to Duryodhan, and then you know the consequence. That's like giving away the world to Adolf Hitler. There is no need to fight the entire world war. Just give him what he wants, and he wanted power over the entire globe. Why couldn't we agree to his demand? Because if Hitler rules, then there would be a proliferation of the wrong kind of values, right till the lowest level of the society. It starts from the top and goes right till the bottom. So, yes, a lot of the wrong kind of happiness and wrong kind of unhappiness can be avoided with discretion.
I mean, this is very beautiful because, a very thought through gems is what you came out with. So, which is why I was absolutely patient, letting you think. I'd like to summarize the 5 points which I could gather. One is build a purpose-driven organization. Money is just a byproduct. Second is have an organization which is vision-driven and value-driven. Third is facts are very, very important. It's like you said, it's the door to the truth. So deal with a lot of numbers and be factually correct. Fourth was internalize clarity and keep the core at the center, and everything around it can change, but the core must not change. And fourth was love the organization, but don't be attached to it. Renunciation, as in the spiritual process, must also be practiced in the corporate world as well. So learn to let go is extremely important. And last point was, which was my personal favorite, that practice dharma within the organization. Let the power rest, empower the right people so that they can be a just organization which gets developed. What beautiful points. I mean, it's such amazing the points that you came up with.
Thank you.
Acharya ji, I must thank you for your time. I feel blessed that I could be the, वो हिंदी में कहते हैं ना जरिया, or the conduit to share this message through Business World and our BW Wellbeing with our audience. I really can't thank you more for the time you have taken out for us. We have taken a lot of time, but we feel blessed.
Really enjoyed the conversation, and thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Acharya.